3, 2, 1. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Regs are good.
So let's finish up chapter 19. We're in section 2. This is part 3, and we'll see, again, we're moving along. The British Empire, for the most part, even though they call it the extension of European power, Britain seems to be the big player here. But like I said before, a lot of these monarchs, these kings and rulers of Europe, they're all, in my opinion, they're all in on it somehow, all related. It all goes back to something else that, of course, we don't really get to see. But we want to take a look at the African slave trade and, what's going on here. Obviously, we'll be seeing slaves taken from Africa. And the reason, so they tell us, is that we had Spain in Mexico and South America, and they're exploiting the labor there, the Native Americans, putting them to work, right? Getting them to work for free for the most part. I mean, there's some variations here. Well, we got to take care of them and, spread the word. But this is all slavery. And we find that these Indians, they don't hold up very well. Here we see that, well, getting back to the slave trade, and these are test questions, so I put them up there. They're kind of not in order, but the heaviest trading occurred from 1700 to 1850. And that's when we see a vast majority of slaves brought to the New World. And of course, when you own a slave, you own the slave's children, and that'll sort of put another dimension on this whole thing. But it points out here that slaves were often caught and captured, and this is in Africa, by other Africans. And then they were, enslaved in Africa and then sold to the European slave traders. Many died on the voyage. We'll talk about that in a minute. Bob Jones is 25%. And in fact, let's just take a look at that right now. These are some of the sketches that you'll find in textbooks. This is what they claim was going on. I wasn't there. How would I know? I can only read and see what has been presented to me. And I got to be honest, I have a little trouble accepting all this. This doesn't look like it would be possible for anyone to survive this sort of treatment. You're laying, again, I mean, think about them getting sick, using the bathroom. This is the stuff they'd be laying in. And so, transporting them across, the objective is to sell them and make as much money as possible. And therefore, you need them to live. And more than that, really, well, maybe not more, but you need them to look somewhat healthy. No one's going to, come and buy a very sick piece of property, let's say. And this is, slaves, they're bought and sold their property. And so this just, I have a little difficulty accepting all this. And, we see here on average about 15%. Now, this is from the U.S. history textbook. Bob Jones claimed 25%. Here it's 15%. And we also see that the average mortality among the white crew of the slave ships was often nearly as bad. And this is another flashing red light. This makes no sense to me. I'm not buying it now. There's something wrong with this story. If the white crew, the crew of the ship have a sleeping quarters and, all the food they need and fresh water. No, this doesn't make sense at all. Anybody with a fraction of a brain should be able to realize there's something radically wrong here with this story. And here's some other stories, again, in the U.S. history textbook, talking about immigrants from Germany, from Europe that, they're treated like garbage too. But we see here, many of these ships, over half of the passengers died. Now, this is just in 1738. This is, not a great example, but it just sort of presents to you the dangers of crossing. And, these people weren't chained up, they may be not being fed well or whatever, but, it's just sort of painting another picture over the slave trade. And of course, here we have some, these are mock photos, obviously. This is not real. Maybe this is CGI, but, another example of, what someone's claiming how it worked. And I look at this and I'm just, I don't know. I have a hard time accepting this. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I am an observer, and from what I've seen, I'm not buying a lot of what I have seen. Now, I need to circle back. the Spanish slaves, right, in the silver mines when Spain first came over here. I'm sorry, the Indians, the Native American Indian slaves, they all started dying out, according to the textbook, due to disease, smallpox, all this stuff, measles, whatever. And therefore, that increased the demand for a slave trade. I should have made this more clear at the moment. So as the Indians die off, the Spanish leaders are like, well, we need more labor. We can import that labor from Africa, assuming these Africans have maybe already been exposed to European disease and are now immune to it. And that gives rise, so the story goes, to the African slave trade. Now let's change gears. Again, we're talking about Africa. David Livingstone, right? This is a missionary, spent most of his time in Africa, spreading the gospel, spreading the good news to Africans. And he's over there. He's over there for a while, and people, what happened to him? Where'd he go? And there's this search. We got to find Dr. Livingstone. And then we have this guy, Henry Stanley, who was hired, I think, by some newspapers to go over there and find him. And sure enough, he does. And the famous quote is, Mr. Stanley comes up to him and says, Dr. Livingstone, I presume. And, that's historical. So a couple guys, these are some test questions. And then we have this other figure here, Mary Slessor, a big fan of Livingstone, apparently. Much younger, but a contemporary nonetheless. She's inspired to go over to Africa and witness and preach and whatever. And she decides she's going to go over to a tribe of cannibals. Good heavens, man. Anyway, so she's going to go witness to them, and they're going to accept her. And she will eventually, they call her mother, and she's beloved, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually England comes in and kind of takes over. We see Calabar taken over by the British government. Here we go again, right, in this area. Probably right in here, Nigeria, I think. Here we have a closer. So this is Cameroon. Cameroon right here. And Calabar looks to be in Nigeria, probably right around this area, I think. I'm not quite sure, but so the British government taking over, and they make her like a leader of these people. And of course, I think I don't know, at least what I think when I'm reading this is I can't believe the intrusion and how it's sort of glossed over. I mean, the big story here to me is the intrusion. Why are you going in there, the whole slave thing, and then you go in and take over? And, are these people's lives, did we improve the quality at all, or did we just eradicate what had once been like a tribal culture? Because this is the theme I see all over the world when these European colonists or colonies are established. It coincides with the eradication of culture, of a way of life that seems to have been very connected to nature, connected to the ground, things of that sort. We call it primitive. But I don't know about that. I'm thinking it's probably somewhat very advanced. I have a feeling these people could look up at the stars and forecast all kinds of things. They probably knew a great deal more about astronomy and about the land and whatever else than those who have sort of disconnected or cut that umbilical cord and are now in a money-driven society. It's all about collecting and gathering money, as opposed to, being, what I would consider living harmoniously with the environment, at least in some degree. Again, there's not a whole lot of records or, written records from these natives, these tribal people. That's all gone. Oh, they never left. They didn't know how to write. I don't know. Maybe. But let's finish up. We have this guy named Rhodes, John Cecil Rhodes. And he's considered the empire builder. And of course, this is more of this sort of hero worship going on. We look at this guy, the empire builder. What does that mean? That means I want to go into Africa and take it over. and eradicate ways of life. He made a fortune in the diamond business, and that's all great. But at what expense? You're coming down there and you're in places where you're not really welcome or wanted, digging out, the profits here that are then extracted and taken out, and the people that live there are kind of, left without any of that profit. But he wanted to create this empire from the Cape, which is down here, to Cairo up here in Egypt. I'm going to conquer all of Africa. I mean, that's quite the ambitious man. Do we look at that and think about how ambitious that is? Or do we look at that and say, this is crazy? That's for you to decide. Clearly, I'm being biased and leading you in my direction. And yeah, you got to question me as well. I mean, who am I? What do I know? I'm just, I've probably read more history than you, but maybe what I'm reading is wrong. So you got to discern for yourself what's going on. But the Rhodes Scholar, I didn't know this. Oh, he's a Rhodes Scholar. A Rhodes Scholar. I always thought it was a Rhodes Scholar, R-O-A-D, and I just assumed that was just sort of like that you traveled around a lot, to become a Rhodes Scholar. Shows you how. See what I mean? See, I just learned this my whole life. I thought it was a Rhodes Scholar, and then I come to find out, looking around at this crazy guy, that this is just a scholarship named after Cecil Rhodes, right? That you go to Oxford and get this. So there you have it. I mean, great example of I don't know what I'm talking about sometimes. And so you got to question everything. Just make it a habit. Question everything, right? You don't have to be flippant about it. Just when you hear something, just like, I don't know. I'll have to check this out. But anyway, I know that Cecil Rhodes wanted to conquer, from the Cape to Cairo. But we see look who's meddling, right? It's not China. It's not India. Look, Britain, Belgium, Italy, France, Portugal, Germany. It's all from where? Come on, everybody. Something's going on here. Why is it all Europe involved here? But we want to talk about the French involvement, and we're blue. All right, so we see the French here. The French are in the north and the west, right? The English are in the south and the northeast. Just pointing that out. And we'll also see the introduction of the French Foreign Legion. Another test question. These are these soldiers that, very highly acclaimed, well-trained. I've read a lot of interesting things about, a lot of these guys apparently were, in prison, and they took them out and made them soldiers, and they were, they could fight and whatever else. Looks like more Europeans, coming down in here where they're not wanted. And you got to ask yourself, I keep asking, why? Who are you to come in here? We want that. We're going to take that. And, the version we read is that's heroic. That's celebrated. And, there's another side to the story. I'm noticing that Madagascar seems to be moving all over the place as I'm going through this. It's always in a different location. I always thought it sort of fit right into this little piece here. And as we can see, maybe the maps are just a little different, but I don't know. Keep your eye on Madagascar and see how this thing is always all over the place, which brings up another question. Can we trust the maps? I don't know. Anyway, we'll finish up with Belgium, right? Here we have Belgium, and they're in the Congo, in the deepest part of Africa, you might say. The Congo. Read Joseph Conrad. You gotta read... what's the name? That book will come to me in just a minute. The Heart of Darkness. Just go get a copy and read it one afternoon. And here we have Leopold II, the leader of Belgium. And look, he conquered the Congo. This is what's celebrated. This is how it's described in our book. What do you mean you conquered it? These people weren't looking for a fight, I don't think. They were just living here, and then someone came in and conquered them for no reason whatsoever other than to take something that was there. Very strange. And so I'll finish up here. These are some buildings in Africa. I was looking for places in the Congo, right? I wanted to see what they got there. This is Ethiopia. And again, this thing's supposedly built around 16 or 1500. This thing is ancient. And, it's in Ethiopia of all places. And again, I look at it and I'm thinking, how do they build this thing, right? It looks like it's in sections. Did they did they put one on top of the other? Or did they just, or is this just some sort of an expansion joint here? I don't know. I mean, it looks to me like it's built in sections, and then of course, these arcs here. What is this brick? What is it? I don't know. It looks like stone. I mean, maybe this is a clue here. I don't know. I guess this is the same as this. I don't know. But clearly these wooden terraces are, added after the fact, right? These are these junky things here. They came in and put them in later, but this is really interesting. I wonder what this is. It looks like some sort of a castle in Ethiopia, of all places, right? Very interesting. And then, of course, let's go into the Congo and see, right? We got these strange buildings here. Not what I would expect. I don't know, nothing really exciting here, but I mean, this architecture doesn't look like I would see it in Africa. Now, maybe the Belgian people built this when they came down. It's very hard to find the names of these buildings, and always a clock on the face of these buildings, right? Very, very, I find that strange, right? The telling time, gotta have a clock. Oh my goodness. I think that these clocks were retrofitted. There was something else there, but what do I know? What is this? This line, what do we got here? This line. I didn't notice that earlier. I don't know. There's something here. I don't think it's a defect in the picture, maybe. I don't know. Maybe here's another one. Got these cables all over the place. What the heck could this be? Anyway, and here we have like a mission or a cathedral somewhat. Here, is this a clock? Always these clocks up here. I think that something else was there first, and they came along, put these clocks in, and we're gonna close with this. I have this on a let's see here. No, we don't want to look at that. We want to look at this. Here it is. Okay, so this is Stanleyville, and I think when we say Stanleyville, you can see it right here. We're talking about, Stanley Livingston, I presume, the missionary. And it says here, it would appear that this building would have been Stanley's home. Again, I'm assuming Stanley Livingston, but, you'd think that they'd put his name. But look at this scaffolding. They want you to think this is under construction, and this building is obviously done. It's complete. There's no construction going on, and these flimsy little, this is ridiculous. They put these on here, maybe they're painting it at best, and, they're just, hey, we forgot the scaffold, just grab some of those tree limbs over there. This to me looks like it's staged. That's what I'm thinking. And so we'll move on. And what do we got here? Construction of the building. And again, the building is complete. And they put a couple sticks or some branches, lean it up with a few ladders, and they'd have you believe that it's under construction maybe. I don't think so. And here we have another picture. This is called the Via Regina. Right? This is all the same building, I think. Is it? Maybe not. Yeah, I think it is. But under construction at the beginning of the century, all right? So, in the let's say 1901, right? This is when they claim it's under construction. But again, it's complete. There's no construction anywhere. They don't even have the fake scaffolding up. They're posing for pictures. And it looks like this whole area has been devastated. And this thing remained, and they stumbled upon it, and now they're claiming they're building it again. I don't know. It's very strange to me. Stanleyville, in 1958, and so here we have it. Looks like it's been all cleaned up. And this is in the Congo, right? Let's see, the Stanleyville, where whatever, and they give us some history here. I'm not going to read through this. And what else do we have here? More pictures. Looks like it's not been cleaned up. It looks kind of messy here. And again, these arches, to me, I find this very complicated kind of engineering. This is not something you go out and build. This is something that, very serious engineers and architects design. And then the actual builder himself, what is this thing even made out of? I'd like to know. What is this, limestone, or is this granite or something? I don't know. I don't think it's drywall. It's certainly not lumber. This is made out of something that I think is probably very difficult to work with. And some more photos here. Check out these cars here. Nice, right? And here we have it, flooded out. in 1979, and I would ask, this thing, do we have a picture? Here we go. This is a year later, after the flood, and I'm thinking, why would you build something this, this is impressive. Why would you build it right on a river? I mean, this is clearly, to me, a floodplain. It's all flat. This is the spillover. And, anybody that goes down by the river and sees these flat, vacant areas, I mean, that's a floodplain. And you would never build something there because then you're going to deal with this every season. And this is the Congo. It's not like the Sahara, jungle, rain, whatever. Look at the trees. So I'm thinking that when this thing was originally built, that this is much, much older than we are being led to believe. Maybe some modifications here. I'm sorry. I don't know, but I'm under the impression that this may have been built when this river was not there. And maybe this river, altered its course, earthquakes, who knows, right? You go upstream and something changed, and the next thing now we're in the middle of a flood zone. Just my opinion here. I don't know. And again, it's just another picture here. Nothing around it. It's out here by itself. I don't know. Very strange. It's like maybe everything around it had been destroyed, and this was the sole remaining building. I don't know. And here again, I mean, why would you build something like that right on the river? I mean, what? 30, 40 feet away, and this is massive river. It's going to flood. And so it looks like we got some other things here. 1989, it's in ruins again. What's going on? 2004, not looking too good. You got to wonder, but it's still there, right? The weather's not going to knock this thing down. I'm led to think this thing is made of stone or granite or something that holds up. Something that just doesn't get knocked down unless it's really beaten. 2006, still there. Not looking very good, but still it looks structurally intact. What year? 2006, I guess, and still there. What are they doing? What's going on with this thing? I don't know. Very strange here. They built a market next to it, but they left it in ruins. Yeah, I mean, it's still there. What is it? Looks like the foundation might be breaking apart. Interesting, I don't know. Anything else here? Pretty current. I guess it's still there. Look, will they clean it up? I don't know. Why is there so much activity around it and it never cleans itself up? Are these staged pictures? Let's just go out there and take a bunch of pictures by this old building that no one lives in, that's just sitting there collecting dirt. I don't know. Anyway, this is the Congo, and this is what I do, right? I like to go through these old things and take a look and, try to put my history timeline together by myself. I appreciate Bob Jones. I appreciate all of the big publishing companies that are sort of bought and paid for. And that's why I like to go into other kinds of alternative history, stuff that's below the radar, stuff that, people like you and I are coming up with, get some clues here, get some clues there, talk about it with other people that are kind of in a similar situation with similar interests, and just draw conclusions and come up with things that make more sense. Anyway, that'll conclude chapter 19.